Take your Bible and turn to Revelation chapter 16. I think we end it with verse 15. I think I've pretty much exhausted that verse. We're going to pick up with 16, and we're going to move pretty quickly through the next two chapters. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but we'll go through these, or at least I think we will. Let's see how it goes. Go, Lord, in prayer. Lord, I pray that you'll take and be with the services this morning. I pray that you will bless them. I pray that you'll be honored and glorified in them. I pray that you'll take and fill me with your Holy Spirit. I pray that you'll take and give me the wisdom of what to say. I pray that I'll teach your word clearly. I pray that there will be no misunderstandings in it. I just pray that you'll use it to strengthen us and help us to grow from it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Verse 16, and he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. Well, that means the hill of the crowded in Hebrew. The hill of the crowded. Hebrew tongue Armageddon. So that's where we get the phrase the Battle of Armageddon. That's the name of the place where it will take place. Verse 17. Now, period. Now that ends a thought, and then he's going to take and give you a list of things that happen right there at the end of Daniel's 70th week that will go along with the Battle of Armageddon. And then he's going to go into an intermission on the great whore mystery Babylon. And now that thing is not a time period thing that fits right here with the seventh vial. That thing is just, you'll see the 17 and 18 is somewhere in the last half of the tribulation, but you will not, it does not give the exact time when those events take place. I'm not trying to put, like I did with the seven vials, or the plagues of the seven vials and the rapture, I'm not going to try to place it exactly when it happens. I'll just say it's in the second half, the events of the next. And the history of her goes all the way back to the time of Christ. All right, that's the history of it. All right, verse 17, and the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, "It is done." I love the way the Lord does that. He does that with the battle of Gog and Magog. There's very little on it because they gather together, they rebel, and then He consumes them. They're done. I mean, it's just, there's not a whole lot that ruffles the Lord up, gets the Lord upset. I mean, it's done. Yeah. With the Lord, you're going to go to battle with somebody that spoke the universe into existence in one day. The stars. Yeah. All right, that's you might be tough, but you ain't that tough. You think about it. It is done. If the Lord's on our side, who can? How does the verse go? If the Lord be on our side, who can be against us? When you think about it, your God is that powerful. You know, the only problem is the lacking of our faith. There's no problems with God. There's no problems with His ability. And we start fretting, we start worrying about, the only thing you need to be worried about is whether or not you're in line with Him. Amen? It's the only thing you truly need to be worrying about. Verse 17, 18. And there were voices and thunders and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth. So mighty an earthquake and so great. Now that's going to be quite the earthquake. And I do believe that will be when San Francisco falls into the ocean. But that is the joke in America. I mean, one of these days, California's just going to slide off into the ocean. And that's going to happen before the millennium, because you're not going to go into the millennium with the state of Cal. All right, man, this could be some false teaching. We'll leave that alone. Yes.
That earthquake take place in Jerusalem?
Yes, it does. Because the city's divided. I think it will be a worldwide earthquake. It's one of them earthquakes that it is definitely connected with the Battle of Armageddon. And that thing's mentioned all the time. The earthquake, the rocks and the hills falling on us, with the hide us from the wrath of the Lamb. They see that's going to be, and it's going to be an earthquake like none other. When it mentions it in the Bible, it's so great, mighty earthquake, and so great like never has been before. Well, there's been some tremendous earthquakes in the history of mankind. If I am correct, there is a huge lake, I think it's Reelfoot Lake, that happened in, I should have looked up the history on this, but Reelfoot Lake was created by a huge earthquake in the U.S. back in the 1800s. I think. Now, I might have the wrong lake with that. Well, there's one of these big lakes here in the U.S. and it was created from a huge earthquake. And so there's been some huge earthquakes in history that has caused some amazing things. And this one's going to be greater than that. Later in, I think it's right here, it says that divides the city, and that will be, well, what verse is it? And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came into remembrance before God. Now, the great city was divided into 3 parts. That will be a reference to Jerusalem. There is another place where it refers to the Lord landing on the Mount of Olives and it being split in half. And then the river will go out to the Great Sea, which would be the Mediterranean Sea. Well, the only way that that's going to happen is if there's a great splitting there along that range, if I understand the terrain. Because right now, all your water, let's see, Israel, see, you got the sea here, right there, and Israel is a land that runs down to Egypt, and you got Jerusalem, and you got a mountain range here. Well, out of Jerusalem, there will be a river that runs right there. Right now, you got Sea of Galilee and Jordan going down through this way. But there's going to be an earthquake so great that it's going to change directions, and there will be a split. So that thing's going to be split right down through there, out of Jerusalem. If I read them passages right, that's the way I understand it. Maybe I got that thing all wrong, but that's the way it looks. That's the way it looks. That'll happen. So that's Jerusalem. The earthquake such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. And the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. Now notice it says the cities of the nations fell. I think that's literal. I think the earthquake, the cities fall. They fall in. Knocks them all down. And that's why I say it's a worldwide earthquake. New York will come down. All these cities will come down. And, you know, it just makes sense that when the Lord rebuilds in the millennium, history will be rubbles. Because why would you want to remember the history of all man's great achievements? It will be rubble. All the cities. Singapore, Odessa. I mean, you got all these great cities with these huge old buildings and people just about worship these buildings, these historical buildings. Man's history glorifies man, not God. Knock all the cities down, you got to start over. So all the cities will fall. Now that's going to be quite the earthquake. That's going to be quite the shaking. The world ain't never seen nothing like that before. Lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. And the great city was divided into 3 parts. Now there's probably a reason for that, but I don't know what it is. Why it's divided into the 3 parts. And that'd be an interesting study to try to figure that out. I have nothing on that one as to why it's divided into 3 parts. And the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon. Now that's what we're going to spend most of the morning on, is Babylon. Came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Now, Babylon is a city where the wrath of God has been building up against that city for thousands of years. And his wrath will come upon it. Now, that's a thought. I do not believe that the destruction of Babylon is right at Armageddon, because we'll see in the next chapter, it looks like the destruction of Babylon is before Armageddon happens. Because actually the destruction of Babylon happens from the Antichrist turning against it. And we'll see that in the next chapter. And the next chapter is kind of an intermission on Mystery Babylon. So it's like a thought being put in there, just like verse 15 was. Not exactly in its place, but as far as chronological order. And that's where people have such a hard time with Revelation, is because it's written as somebody writing it with everything already taken place, and he'll add thoughts in it. Or he'll give an account of the same thing. There is a certain amount of truth that the book is not written in a chronological order. It's written as if it's already been done, and he's saying, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is why it happened. And the Lord writes that way many times, even in the Bible. He's writing it as an afterthought, as if it's already happened. That's prophecy. Prophecy is written as if it's past. Why? Because God's eternal. The future, He's looking back on. And that is something we as man cannot understand. We cannot understand it. And you'll see that many times in the Bible. Why? Because you got to look who the author is. Man cannot write a book like that, because he cannot view history as if it's already the future as if it's already taken place. Only God can. All right. Nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath, and every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. And there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent. Now I have a note in my Bible that I wrote in here, and I don't know where I got this note from, but I have a talent is 80 pounds. 70 to 100. Okay. I got 80 pounds written in there. That's quite the hailstone. I mean, can you imagine the insurance claims on the vehicles? Even if the buildings lasted through the earthquake, they wouldn't last through that. I mean, that's quite something. Hailstones, weight of a talent. And men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail. I think the moral of the story is men is going to blaspheme God no matter what. Yeah. I mean, yes.
To even make a hailstone that heavy means that the winds up in the atmosphere are just crazy. So any planes would crash and everything would be all
Yeah, something. I mean, that's miraculous in itself, an 80-pound hailstone. I mean, to be able to do that. You know, I never really thought about the storm it would take to make a hailstone. And it says, great hail out, of course it says out of heaven, too. Which, I mean, it could be it comes from the deep with him. Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility of that. I mean, it could come from outer space, but...
And you think an earthquake is going to level the buildings in the nations, going to cause tidal waves that's going to take out Obama's new house.
Tidal waves that's going what?
The tidal waves that have come in after it are going to put out, just some of the dust of all the rubble. I mean, it's going to be catastrophic in every...
Yeah, that way the scientists can say this came from this period of... no, I mean,
If they're still alive.
Yeah. Amen. There's a picture that Dr. Ruckman writes in his Science and Philosophy. And if you really want to read Dr. Ruckman's book on science and philosophy, you have to just go through and look at the pictures. And the pictures are worth 1,000 words. And, he's got this Johnson outboard motor down in like the 4th stratosphere. Sitting there. I'm like, yeah.
Sam, I often wondered, if this happened during this period, what the new earth and the new world's going to look like in the millennium. I mean, with the destruction.
Well, the millennium isn't the new heavens and the new earth. It's a restored earth.
But you wonder what it's going to look like.
It's going. I've always wondered that too. And I've always wondered if man's technology is wiped out in the millennium. And it's kind of put back to the way the Lord originally set things up. Because it looks to me like you have a different form of reaping and harvesting. I would guess that the age of machines might be gone in the millennium. That that's wiped out. That might be because I'm a mechanic. I don't ever want to work on a car again. I think it's going to be very different, though. I think it'll be very different.
There's nothing you know of historically that would describe the millennium earth.
Well, you got the reaper overtaking the sower. Well, that's not something that this earth can even understand. The earth is not set up that way. The only way you can manage that is with greenhouses. So your whole system is changed. And it's almost like the seasons and everything is changed in the millennium. It's going to exactly how it'll be. I don't know. The millennium. I'm talking about the millennium. In the millennium, when the Lord's reign.
If there's nothing left, then they will rebuild. The technology is gone.
They'll rebuild it, but you have a different. You have immortal beings, which will be us, as the kings and the priests. Okay, it's a totally different setup. It's going to be a different setup of governing. It's going to be a different setup of rule. It's going to be something the earth has never seen before. And it's going to be a perfect system. As the Lord's doing it, it'll be a perfect system.
But still in the millennium, we still have freedom. Free will.
There's still a sin nature. Is that what you?
Right.
Yes.
And still have.
But you don't have the devil. And you don't have demonic beings. So everything in the millennium that's sin nature will be the flesh of man, which is pretty bad. I mean, don't underestimate the flesh. But the flesh also will have a strong persuasion to do what's right, because they won't be able to get away with it. He'll rule with a rod of iron. And think about it. Your ruler knows the thoughts and intents of your heart. It's going to be kind of hard to get away with something. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people say before that by the end, the great white throne judgment, that man will have existed in every situation that they could use as an excuse. You could say, well, if everything would have been perfect, I wouldn't have. Well, that's a Garden of Eden. If we would have had better rulers, well, that would be millennium.
Right.
If there wasn't the devil to make me do bad things, well, in the millennium there's no devil. There won't be an excuse like it. Man fails in every instance.
And on his sin nature, he has that. And the other thing is, it's a big circle. It's I've had it described. It'll go back to the Garden of Eden. It's one big circle, go right back to where it started. And the millennium, you're not quite there yet. The animals look to be put back into the place, because there's a partial curse lifted off the animals in the millennium. But what you do have is the removal of sin and sorrow.
Right.
You don't have a complete removal of that in the millennium. It's better, but it's not removed. You have the long life again, like what you had before the flood. So it's going in a reverse situation. You're coming back to here. You're coming back to it in the millennium. But you won't be there until the new heavens and the new earth. It's like the new heavens and the new earth is what God originally was going for before man fell. Huh?
You're going to have rulers over the people, right?
Rulers over what? See, here's the difficulty, separating this from this. Okay? That's where it gets difficult. Because when you read about it, it almost seems like the millennium just goes on into eternity. But you do have the great white throne, the battle of Gog and Magog, and the wiping away of all tears from their eyes in between the two. The wiping of tears from your eyes and no more death and no more sorrow does not happen here. That happens here. So until sin is removed from the world, you don't have that. Death still has its power. It's just it's being reduced in the millennium. It's reduced. Huh? That's when everything's made perfect. Every man will be made perfect and there's no more sin. But sin's still in the millennium. And you know that because they all rebel at Gog and Magog. And how quickly they'll do it when the devil's loosed for a short time. You turn the devil loose, man, man just goes bloop. He falls. And that's exactly what they'll do in the millennium. And he'll probably be a freedom speech. It's probably what he's going to liberate the people. Not so much freedom, but liberate. Be careful of the word liberate. Study the way that word's been used. We're going to liberate you.
Separate your soul from your body.
The way the world used liberate is we're going to let you do what you want to do and give you the desires of your flesh. That's the way liberate is used by officials. Sin brings one into captivity. If you want to rule a people and rule over them as a fallen man, You have to allow sin to reign in their life for a certain. Somebody told me this, I forget. Oh, it was Chris Root. When I was over in Ukraine, he was telling me, he said that the Hitler taught, and his generals taught his people, or the rulers of Nazi Germany, that the way communists worked, or the Nazis worked, was you have to degrade the moral of the people before you can rule over them.
Right.
So you get rid of the Bible, and you promote pornography, and you promote different types of sin, and even communism, which will put sodomy, will do away with sodomy like they do in Russia, will take and promote that in a country before they overtake it. And the reason they do that is because immoral people is a people that do not have strong values, and they can be easily controlled. So when somebody uses the word liberate, 60s, the ladies were liberated. Amen? They were liberated. The women movement. You had a sexual movement go. You had a drug movement. This was all liberation. What were they liberated from? Old-fashioned values is what they were liberated from. So where have we been headed ever since? Socialism. I mean, you got to kind of see the way the deception behind the scenes. You know what you're seeing today? You're seeing the deception behind the scenes. You got to look at the deception behind the scenes. You say, what do you have today? You have today a people who do not have strong enough character to overcome fear, and they'll let anybody rule over them. So if they can give them a comfort to get over that fear, they'll let anybody rule over them. And that's the way a one world government can step in. You say, how is it possible that a one world government could happen? Well, you ought to be able to see that can easily be possible. Yeah. There's only a few narrow-minded people that need to be removed. You know? And let me tell you, when the rapture happens, most of them narrow-minded people will be removed. I mean, they don't have to deal with us anymore. I mean, you get some of your most conservative people are your saved people. Those are the ones that still know how to think for themselves. But they still have their morality. They still have their values. They still have their stands. You know why America was such an independent nation with such strong character? Because they had a Bible and strong morality in most of the families. Well, that's going away. With more immorality comes less strong characters. I'm willing to die for my country. Well, medical workers, right now they say it's a war on the coronavirus. Oh, we're all afraid of dying. We want compensation pay as an essential worker. Do you give compensation pay for a soldier when he's fighting a war? No, he's doing what he signed up for. Because he believes in what he's doing. You know, the most dangerous soldier is the one that actually believes in the cause and that's willing to die for it. That's the most dangerous soldier. If you have a nation that believes in their cause, that's a dangerous nation that you cannot overcome because they believe it. If our nation believed in its Constitution and its Bill of Rights, it would be unstoppable. You know what the problem is? Probably over 50% of your people don't truly believe in their Constitution and Bill of Rights. They don't believe it. They don't truly believe that. I mean, I'd like to think that they still do, but I don't know. This thing makes me wonder if they do as a whole. Verse 21, we got off on that. So how did we get on that from 80-pound hailstones? But and blasphemed God because of the plague of the hell. The plagues thereof was exceeding great. Now, chapter 17. Now, 17 and 18 has to do with Mystery Babylon. Mystery because there's a secret about her that she's not recognized for what she is. Okay, and the way she comes about. John marvels at her, and it's no wonder, because here is a city that is completely satanic in his eyes that takes on the name of Christ. And it's the enemy of Christ taking on the name of Christ. Okay, so you got to put him here. He's under pagan Rome. He's under pagan Rome. And then he sees Rome from today's time and religious Rome, taking on as the Pope as the victor of Christ and everything opposite of what Christ taught, being promoted in the name of Christ as a religious system, city and stuff. And John sees this and he's like, huh? How did that happen? You got to look at it from his viewpoint. And here he's out on the Isle of Patmos because of Rome. And then he jumps ahead and he sees it later and he's like, this just doesn't add up. This is marvelous. So he marvels at it. The first 7 verses of the chapter is the vision that John sees. The rest of it is the angel explaining the vision. Now, the chapter is not that difficult. Why? You say, well, everybody struggles with this chapter. It's really not that difficult. The angel tells you what it means. And that's what you got to always come back to in this chapter, because you're going to hear so much stuff about this chapter people try and explain. You fall in lines with what the angel says, and he explains it. Okay? So we'll start here with this. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Now, obviously, you're going to use the typical way the word fornication is used, and that's going to be spiritual fornication of idolatry. There may be some more literal stuff with that in the tribulation, but I would just stick with the spiritual fornication of idolatry, because that's the way it's used time and time again in the Bible. And you can read some chapters in Ezekiel and the whole book of Hosea that will show that very clearly. So he carried me away in the spirit in the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and colored, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. We're going to take and pick this up next week, and we will take and study her next week.